So what if two of the biggest names in media, one from the world of tech, the other from traditional news, were actually fighting the exact same war? Well, we're going to break down an analysis that claims that's precisely what's happening. It's a battle for the American narrative, and it's playing out right now at X and, believe it or not, CBS News.
So you've got Elon Musk over at X, and on the other side, Bari Weiss, who's now taken a top spot at CBS News. Now, at first glance, they seem like they're in totally different worlds, right? But the analysis we're digging into argues they've been given the same, pretty controversial job to basically clean house and totally change the direction of their organizations.
But what is that new direction? What's the big idea here? According to this particular analysis, Musk and Weiss are fighting the same war. So let's get into what that war is really all about.
Okay, so here's the core argument. It's that both Musk and Weiss are on a mission to push back against what this analysis calls a wave of anti-American sentiment on their platforms. The goal, supposedly, is to build this new, very explicit pro-America vision for how we get our news and information.
So where did all this tension come from? Well, according to the source, it all kicked off with this one simple memo from Bari Weiss at CBS. All she did was ask her new staff what they were proud of. But that question, which some saw as echoing Musk's direct, no-nonsense style, apparently caused the newsroom to, as the source puts it, lose their minds.
But maybe the clearest piece of evidence, from this particular point of view, came later in the new guiding principles for the CBS Evening News. Tucked right in there was this simple, but wow, explosive statement: "We love America." For the folks behind this analysis, that was it. That was the unmistakable signal of this whole new direction.
And yeah, that one little principle, it immediately kicked off a huge backlash. The debate that followed really gets to the heart of a pretty fundamental question. What is the true role of a journalist? And can that role ever really be compatible with patriotism?
And this is really where the two philosophies just slam into each other. On one side, you have this argument for a patriotic, pro-America journalism. But then the counter-argument, which was really laid out in an article from the New Republic, is that a journalist's only loyalty should be to things like accuracy and fearlessness, that patriotism just doesn't belong in the equation at all.
This quote pretty much sums up the entire opposition's viewpoint. It really gets to the core of why both Weiss and Musk are facing such intense criticism. This core belief that being pro-America is, by its very definition, anti-journalism. But look, this isn't just some philosophical debate happening in an ivory tower. The analysis argues that what's really at stake here is control over the national narrative itself. It's about who gets to decide which stories get told, and maybe more importantly, which ones get completely buried.
Now, this analysis points to this one story as a perfect example of what they're talking about. It's a timeline of a scandal involving a Minnesota daycare. So allegations first pop up on X, but legacy media? Crickets. They totally ignore it. Then, social media pressure just builds and builds until the mainstream outlets are basically forced to cover it. And the impact? Well, it allegedly led to Governor Tim Walz pulling out of the running to be a vice presidential candidate. The analysis claims this is exactly the kind of power Musk wants X to have, the power to drag uncomfortable stories out into the open.
And the stakes here are just incredibly high. This isn't some small-time experiment. The source we're looking at claims that the Ellison family has invested $150 million in Bari Weiss. That gives her some serious financial backing and makes it really, really hard for any internal opposition to push her out. So that brings us right up to today, because this whole battle is far from over. In fact, the analysis we're following argues it's really just getting started, and we're already seeing the first signs of a really major shift. Think about this. On the very first night of the new CBS Evening News under this new leadership, the analysis points out the two lead stories. One was about potential corruption involving Senator Mark Kelly, and the other was the fallout from that Tim Walz story we just talked about. But it's not just the stories themselves that matter, it's what they signal. What this perspective is arguing is that these story choices were a very deliberate signal. It was a conscious shift to cover topics that other big legacy networks might have just swept under the rug or ignored completely. It's being presented as real, tangible proof that a new editorial direction is already taking hold. And all of this really leaves us with a huge question, doesn't it? This whole conflict over at X and CBS News is really about what we believe the primary role of the press should be. Is its job to unite a nation, or is it to challenge power, no matter what the consequences are? There's definitely no easy answer. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.